The Azraxi Imperium had conquered 17 civilizations across 3 galactic arms before they encountered Earth. They had a formula, tested and perfected over millennia. Observe, analyze, categorize, and if the species showed promise, subjugate. Their quantum computers could predict the technological progression of any civilization with 99.99% accuracy. Or at least, that's what they believed until they found us. Supreme Commander Zixtal stood aboard the bridge of the Imperial vessel Destiny's Chain, his iridescent scales reflecting the soft blue glow of the holographic displays. The sight of the blue-green planet rotating slowly on the main screen should have filled him with the usual cold satisfaction. Instead, an unfamiliar sensation crept along his neural pathways. Doubt. "Explain to me again," he commanded, eyes fixed on the image of Earth, "why this species warrants special observation." Chief Analyst Miravek's crystalline form hummed with barely contained excitement as she manipulated the data streams. "Supreme Commander, they're breaking every model we've established. Look at their development curve." The holographic display shifted, showing a jagged, almost violent upward trajectory. They went from primitive combustion engines to rudimentary spaceflight in less than a century. It took the collective of Rack's 15 centuries to make the same leap. A statistical anomaly. Zixtal dismissed, though his secondary heart betrayed his unease with an irregular beat. Then explain this. Miravek projected a new series of readings. They're simultaneously developing quantum computing while large portions of their population still rely on fossil fuels. They're researching fusion power while fighting wars with chemical explosives. It's chaos, Supreme Commander. Beautiful, impossible chaos. The Supreme Commander's natural instinct was to dismiss these concerns. The Azraxi had encountered countless species that showed unusual traits or developmental patterns. All had fallen according to the formula. Yet something about these readings disturbed him at a fundamental level. Their information networks, he mused, studying the data streams. They're completely unregulated. Multiple competing systems, no central control. His voice trailed off as he noticed something even stranger. Are they using their global communication network primarily for entertainment? Miravek's crystalline form pulsed with what passed for enthusiasm among her kind. That's just it, Supreme Commander. They devote massive resources to creating fictional scenarios, imaginary worlds, hypothetical situations. At first, we thought it was a form of mass delusion, but it's deliberate. They call it creativity and entertainment, but our analysis suggests it serves as a form of distributed problem-solving matrix. Before Zixtal could respond, alert signals pulsed across every screen on the bridge. Security Chief Caxlor's tentacles writhed in agitation as he interpreted the readings. Impossible. They've detected an energy signature from our cloaking field. How? Zixtal demanded. Their technology is centuries away from being able to. They didn't use technology, sir, Caxlor interrupted, his professional composure cracking. One of their entertainment creators wrote a story about detecting invisible ships by measuring gravitational micro-distortions. Some of their scientists read it, thought it was interesting, and decided to try it. They built the detector in someone's garage using parts from something called a microwave oven and a gaming console. The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. These humans weren't following any known pattern of technological or social development. They were simply making things up, trying random combinations, following illogical hunches, and somehow, impossibly, it was working. Sir, Miravek's voice had taken on an urgent tone. I've been analyzing their response patterns to theoretical threats. Every other species we've encountered develops defensive strategies based on known technologies and proven methodologies. These humans, they have thousands of scenarios prepared for threats they've never encountered. They call them science fiction and video games, but they're essentially combat simulations for wars they've imagined. Zixtal felt his scales bristle. In all his centuries of conquest, he'd never encountered anything like this, A species that didn't just adapt to challenges, but actively imagined new ones, that treated the impossible as a temporary inconvenience rather than an absolute barrier. "Recall all observation teams," he ordered, his voice grave. "Encrypt all data transmissions. Lock down every scrap of information we've gathered about our technology, our tactics, our capabilities." "Sir," Caxlor interrupted again, his tentacles now practically tying themselves in knots. "We're detecting artificial satellites changing orbit to track our position. They're using their entire planet's network of weather satellites, communication relays, and something called Starlink to triangulate our location. The algorithms they're using, they're based on patterns from something called Ender's Game." The Supreme Commander felt a sensation he hadn't experienced since his earliest days at the Imperial Academy. Fear. These humans weren't just developing random technologies. They were imagining things that should be impossible and then finding ways to make them work. How do you conquer a species that doesn't accept the existence of limitations? New contact. The sensor operator's alarmed voice cut through the tense atmosphere. Multiple launch signatures from the surface. "They're using." "Sir, I don't even understand what they're using." "The propulsion systems appear to be based on theories our scientists declared impossible 3 centuries ago." As the bridge erupted into chaos, Sixtol watched the approaching human vessels with a mixture of horror and fascination. The Azraxi had spent millennia perfecting the art of conquest, reducing it to a science. But how do you apply scientific principles to a species that treats the laws of physics as mere suggestions? He realized, with growing dread, that they hadn't discovered a new civilization to conquer. They'd awakened something that defied their fundamental understanding of how intelligent life was supposed to develop. And now, this impossibility was coming to meet them. The data crystals in Science Director Relvac's laboratory pulsed with an increasingly erratic rhythm as they struggled to process the latest observations from Earth. 3 months had passed since the Destiny's Chain's retreat to the outer solar system, and each day brought new impossibilities. "They shouldn't be able to do this," Relvac muttered, his tentacles twitching as he studied the holographic projections. "They simply shouldn't be able to do this." The object of his distress floated in the display before him. A crude but functioning quantum computer, built by a group of human university students using modified gaming processors and cooling systems salvaged from old refrigerators. It wasn't elegant. It wasn't efficient. By all rights, it shouldn't have worked at all. But it did. "Director," his assistant Kretel called from another monitoring station. "You need to see this. The humans in the region they call Silicon Valley have just announced something new." Relvac glided over, already dreading what fresh impossibility awaited him. The announcement described a new artificial intelligence system, developed using principles that simultaneously violated and confirmed 3 different theories of consciousness. The humans had apparently created it while trying to make better video game characters. "They don't even realize what they've done," Kretel whispered, her crystalline form flickering with anxiety. "They think they've made a better entertainment product. Director, they've accidentally created a new form of digital life." Across the solar system, similar scenes played out aboard the massive Azraxi observation vessels. The humans, completely unaware of their alien observers, continued their chaotic, unplanned march toward technologies that should have been centuries beyond their reach. In what the humans called Japan, a team of researchers trying to develop better baseball pitching machines had inadvertently created a prototype for a mass driver that could launch payloads into orbit at a fraction of the cost of conventional rockets. In India, a collaboration between traditional healers and biotech engineers had produced medical nanobots that defied the known laws of atomic interaction. Supreme Commander Sixtol received these reports with growing unease. "Show me their global communication networks again," he ordered during yet another emergency council. "Show me how they're coordinating these developments." "That's just it, Supreme Commander," Miravek responded, her crystalline form now permanently anxious. "They're not coordinating. There's no central planning, no unified research direction. They're just playing." The holographic display showed the dizzying array of human information networks. Social media platforms where scientific papers were shared alongside cat videos. Online forums where teenagers debated theoretical physics with retired professors. Crowdfunding sites where backyard inventors raised millions in human currency to pursue ideas that ranged from brilliant to absurd. Look at this, Miravec continued, highlighting a particular data stream. A human child in what they call Kenya suggested combining their primitive neural networks with quantum mechanics in a way our scientists insisted was impossible. She posted it on something called TikTok while dancing. 2 weeks later, research teams on 3 different continents were testing prototypes. Security Chief Caxler's tentacles coiled in frustration. We've tried to influence their development. We've seeded their networks with subtle disinformation, tried to guide them toward dead ends. But they, his voice trailed off in disbelief. But they what? Zixtal demanded. They turned our disinformation into plot points for their entertainment, sir. Someone wrote a story about why our suggested impossibilities might actually work in a different way. And now they're building prototypes. The Supreme Commander felt his scales ripple with suppressed emotion. The Izraxi had spent millennia perfecting the art of shepherding younger species, subtly guiding their development along predictable paths that made them easier to eventually conquer. But these humans, they treated dead ends as detours, impossibilities as challenges, and mistakes as opportunities. New development. Kretel's voice cut through the council chamber. A group of human garage inventors has just successfully tested a device that her crystalline form flickered in distress. Report, Zixtal commanded. They've created a functional tachyonic antenna, sir. They can receive signals from their own future. The council chamber erupted in chaos. Tachyonic communications were theoretically possible, but the energy requirements and computational complexity had defeated even the Izraxi's best scientists. The humans had apparently achieved it with modified satellite dishes and algorithms borrowed from online gaming servers. How long? Zixtal asked, his voice barely audible above the commotion. How long until they achieve capabilities matching our own? Miravec's response chilled the chamber to silence. Supreme Commander, based on their current rate of development, they may have already surpassed us in several areas. We just don't understand their implementations well enough to recognize it. Explain, he demanded. Their methods are inefficient, chaotic, often seemingly random. They achieve results through means our science says should not work. We've been monitoring their military capabilities, their space program, their official research institutes. But their true advancement is happening in universities, garages, basements, and something they call maker spaces. The implications were staggering. The Izraxi had always relied on their ability to predict and control the development of younger species. But humanity's chaotic, unplanned innovation had rendered their models useless. Every human with access to their global information network was potentially working on solutions to problems they hadn't even encountered yet. As if to punctuate this revelation, new alerts flashed across the council chamber's displays. Somewhere in what the humans called South Korea, a gaming company had just announced a new virtual reality system. Hidden in the technical specifications were principles that, if properly understood, could revolutionize faster-than-light travel. The silent revolution wasn't silent anymore, and the Izraxi were beginning to realize they weren't its observers. They were its unwitting catalysts. The first shots of the war weren't fired with weapons, but with code. The Izraxi, in their desperation to contain humanity's chaotic advancement, launched what they believed would be a crushingly effective first strike, a simultaneous attack on Earth's entire digital infrastructure. Supreme Commander Zixtal watched from the Destiny's Chains command center as the most sophisticated cyber warfare suite in known space unleashed its full fury on humanity's networks. How long until their systems collapse? He asked, expecting to hear minutes, perhaps hours at most. Instead, network warfare specialist Vextra's response was confused. Sir, they're laughing at us. Explain. The humans, they're treating our attack like a game. They're calling it a live-fire penetration test and the ultimate hackathon. They're streaming their defense efforts on something called Twitch while eating snacks and drinking energy beverages. On screens across the command center, the impossible was happening. Rather than crumbling, Earth's disparate networks were adapting, evolving, developing antibodies against the Azraxi attack patterns. Teenagers in bedrooms were patching vulnerabilities that had taken Azraxi engineers centuries to develop. System administrators were sharing solutions in chat rooms, turning the attack into an impromptu global teaching moment. Sir, Vextra's voice cracked. They're not just defending. They're taking our attack code apart and improving it. They're discussing better ways we could have attacked them. They're thanking us for the learning opportunity. The Supreme Commander's scales, darkened with rage, launched the hardware strike. Now, across Earth's orbit, dormant Azraxi satellites activated, preparing to unleash electromagnetic pulses that would fry every electronic device on the planet. But before they could fire, something unexpected happened. Sir, Security Chief Caxlor's tentacles writhed in alarm. Our satellites, they're being physically captured. The displays showed the impossible. Swarms of crude but effective space drones, apparently launched in secret over the previous months, were neutralizing the Azraxi satellites. The drones looked like they'd been cobbled together from commercial satellite parts, solar panels, and what appeared to be modified farming equipment. How did they know? Zixtal demanded. How did they detect our dormant platforms? Sir, Miravek's crystalline form pulsed with resignation. They didn't. According to their public records, these drones were designed to clean up space debris. They'd been launching them for months as part of an environmental protection program. They accidentally developed a perfect counter to our strategy, while trying to solve a completely different problem. The Supreme Commander watched in stunned silence as humanity's janitors of space methodically disabled weapons platforms that had conquered dozens of civilizations. But this was just the beginning. As the Azraxi fleet moved to engage, they discovered that humanity had more accidental defenses in place. The global satellite network they'd built for streaming entertainment proved perfectly suited for coordinating planetary defense. Their primitive radar systems, enhanced by software written for tracking weather patterns, could now track Azraxi ships through their stealth fields. Multiple launches detected from the planet's surface. Caxlor announced, his professional demeanor cracking. They're using modified passenger aircraft as space fighters. They've somehow adapted their primitive jet engines to work in vacuum. The principles they're using, they shouldn't work, but the screens showed the truth. Humanity had turned their entire civilization into a weapons factory. Commercial airliners modified into space fighters, weather satellites repurposed into defense platforms, gaming computers transformed into combat coordination systems. But it was what happened next that truly demonstrated humanity's terrifying potential. Sir, Miravek's voice was barely a whisper. They're inside our systems. Impossible. Our quantum encryption. They didn't break the encryption, sir. They wrote a program that convinced our computers it was a new form of entertainment. Our systems invited it in. Across the Azraxi fleet, ships began behaving erratically as human code, which seemed to be partly written in something called Python and partly in Excel macros, spread through their networks. Weapons systems started playing something called Doom. Navigation computers became obsessed with Pokemon Go. And then, humanity revealed their true advantage: adaptability. A transmission cut through all Azraxi communications channels. The voice spoke in perfect Imperial Standard, though the translation was clearly being handled by something that had started life as a social media language filter. This is Dr. Sarah Chen of the United Earth Defense Force. We've studied the technology you so kindly demonstrated during your observation of our planet. Your ships are currently running on what we believe are significantly improved versions of your original systems. You're welcome. We recommend powering down before our upgrades decide to test themselves." The Supreme Commander watched in horror as human innovations began manifesting throughout his fleet. Ships that had been state-of-the-art now seemed primitive compared to what humanity had dreamed up while trying to build better phones and develop more immersive gaming experiences. "Sir," Caxlor reported, his tentacles now completely tied in knots, "the humans are offering us technical support for our outdated systems. They've set up a help desk and are sending us user guides written in emoji." The supreme irony wasn't lost on Zixtal. The Izraxi had come to guide humanity's development, to shepherd them along a predictable path. Instead, humanity's chaotic innovation had revolutionized Izraxi technology itself. The invasion hadn't failed because humanity was stronger. It had failed because they made strength irrelevant. They turned the entire conflict into just another problem to solve, another system to improve, another game to win. And they were clearly having fun doing it. The Izraxi High Council had convened an emergency session in the sacred halls of their homeworld when the first human ship appeared in their space. It didn't arrive through conventional fold space or through any recognized faster-than-light method. Instead, it simply materialized, riding what human scientists casually described as a wave of theoretical probability. "Impossible," whispered first speaker Ixis, all four of his hearts skipping simultaneously. "Their civilization is barely 3 centuries old. They cannot have mastered quantum probability drives." "They haven't," reported Science Director Relvac, who had survived the Earth debacle and now served as the foremost expert on human behavior. According to their public research papers, they were trying to develop better pizza delivery systems. The faster-than-light travel was, in their words, a happy accident. The human vessel, dubbed Swift Mistake, in glowing letters across its hull, hung in space like an artistic interpretation of what a spaceship should be. Its design violated dozens of established engineering principles, yet somehow achieved greater efficiency than any Izraxi craft. A transmission from the ship reached the High Council chamber, broadcast simultaneously in all known galactic languages and several new ones the humans had apparently invented for fun. The holographic image showed a human female in what appeared to be casual clothing, sitting in a captain's chair that looked suspiciously like a modified gaming seat. "This is Captain Maya Rodriguez of the Earth exploration vessel Swift Mistake," she announced, sipping from a container labeled Space Coffee. "We come in peace, bearing gifts of scientific and technological exchange. Also pizza. We finally figured out how to make it taste good in zero gravity." The High Council chamber erupted in confused whispers. The Izraxi had expected revenge, military action, or at least diplomatic demands. Instead, humanity's first official contact was offering food and technology sharing. "We've been reviewing the data you collected during your observation of Earth," Captain Rodriguez continued, her tone friendly, but with an undercurrent of amusement. "We've made some improvements to most of your systems. Your quantum computers, for instance, run much better if you let them play Minecraft in their downtime." "Who knew?" Science Director Relvac's tentacles twitched as data streams began flowing into the Izraxi networks. The humans were freely sharing innovations that rendered centuries of Izraxi technology practically obsolete. But more shocking was their methodology. "They're not just giving us technology," he reported, his voice trembling. "They're showing us how to think differently. Each innovation comes with what they call brainstorming exercises and creative thinking games." More human ships began arriving, each using different and seemingly impossible methods of faster-than-light travel. One surfed gravitational waves like they were ocean swells. Another appeared to be powered entirely by something called interpretive dance. A third claimed to move through space by asking the universe nicely. But it was the passenger ships that truly demonstrated humanity's transformative influence on the galaxy. They called it the Galactic Exchange Program, and it was changing everything. "You want us to what?" First Speaker Ixis demanded, reading the proposal. "Send your young to Earth to learn, and accept human teachers here, Captain Rodriguez explained. Not to learn specific technologies, but to learn how to think differently, how to see problems as opportunities, how to play. The Izraxi had no concept of play before encountering humans. Now, their youngest were learning to combine work and enjoyment, to experiment without fear of failure, to imagine impossibilities and then make them real. Across Izraxi space, changes were already manifesting. Research institutes were being redesigned to include brainstorming rooms and creativity zones. Military engineers were being taught to approach problems through what humans called lateral thinking. Even the sacred halls of the High Council now featured a casual Friday. The humans aren't conquering us, Science Director Relvac realized, watching young Izraxi learn to play human video games that simultaneously taught advanced physics concepts. They're infecting us with their chaos, their creativity, their joy. The data proved him right. Izraxi worlds that had adopted human teaching methods were advancing faster than ever before. Their ships were becoming more efficient, their computers more capable, their society more adaptable. All because they were learning to embrace uncertainty, to experiment, to play. Captain Rodriguez's voice cut through his contemplation. "We're detecting some interesting quantum fluctuations in the Carina sector," she announced. "We're organizing an expedition to investigate. Any Izraxi scientists want to join? Fair warning, our research methods involve movie nights, pizza parties, and something we call brainstorming while bungee jumping." Looking at the eager tentacles and crystalline forms raised in Volunteer, Science Director Relvac understood the true power of humanity. They hadn't just surpassed the Izraxi technologically, they'd shown them a completely new way of existing. The galaxy would never be the same, and perhaps that was exactly what it needed. 5 years after first contact, the combined Human Izraxi Research Institute made a discovery that shook the foundations of galactic science. It happened, like many human breakthroughs, by accident. Dr. Sarah Chen had been trying to teach a group of young Izraxi scientists how to play jazz music when her neural scanner picked up something unprecedented. The Izraxi brains, attempting to understand the concept of improvisation, were forming new neural pathways that shouldn't have been possible. "Look at this," she said to Science Director Relvac, pointing to the holographic brain scans floating above her workstation. "Their consciousness is evolving just by trying to understand how humans think." The science director's tentacles moved in complex patterns of excitement and concern. "And you believe this explains everything?" Sarah nodded. "Why humans develop the way we do. Why we can imagine impossible things and then make them real. Why we play, create, and innovate in ways that seem chaotic to other species." The evidence was undeniable. Human consciousness itself was an evolutionary anomaly, a cosmic accident that had produced a species capable of imagining things that didn't exist and then bringing them into reality through sheer determination and creativity. "Your brains," Relvac observed, studying the comparative scans, "they exist in a constant state of quantum uncertainty. You're simultaneously processing what is and what could be. It's beautiful and terrifying." News of the discovery spread rapidly through both human and Izraxi space. Human consciousness wasn't just different. It was actively changing the fundamental rules of how sentient life could develop. Simply by interacting with humans, other species were beginning to develop similar capabilities. The Galactic Council, hastily formed to address this development, convened an emergency session. Representatives from dozens of species gathered to discuss the implications. The humans attended virtually, most of them multitasking, solving complex equations while playing games, designing new technologies while watching entertainment streams. "You must understand," Supreme Counselor Zixtal, formerly Supreme Commander, addressed the assembly. "Humanity isn't just another species. They're an evolutionary catalyst. Their very existence changes the rules of what's possible." The evidence was everywhere. Worlds that had contact with humans were advancing at unprecedented rates. Species that had been technologically stagnant for millennia were suddenly making breakthroughs in dozens of fields. And it wasn't just about technology. Art, music, literature, and entirely new forms of expression were emerging across the galaxy. But it was a transmission from Earth that truly illuminated humanity's role in the cosmic order. A team of human children, participating in what they called a science fair, had inadvertently proven that consciousness itself was contagious. Their simple experiment, involving quantum entanglement and something called tick-tock dances, demonstrated that human-style creativity could be transmitted through mere observation. "We're not just changing other species," Dr. Chen explained to the council. "We're helping the universe remember how to dream." The final piece of the puzzle came from an unexpected source: a group of human teenagers, designing characters for a new virtual reality game, had created an accurate model of how consciousness had evolved across the galaxy. They'd done it while trying to make their game characters more interesting. Their model showed something astonishing. The universe itself seemed to have been waiting for a species like humanity. The rigid, logical development of other civilizations had been creating a kind of cosmic stagnation. Humanity's chaotic creativity wasn't just an anomaly. It was the universe's answer to entropy. "Think about it," Sarah told the council, while simultaneously solving a Rubik's Cube and composing a symphony. Every other species evolved to fit into the universe. Humans evolved to reshape it. The implications were staggering. Humanity's seeming illogical development, their ability to imagine the impossible and then achieve it, their constant drive to create and explore. These weren't flaws or accidents. They were the universe's way of ensuring its own continued evolution. In the 5 years since first contact, humanity had introduced the concept of what if to a galaxy that had only known what is. They'd shown that progress didn't have to follow a predetermined path, that logic and creativity could coexist, that play was as important as purpose. As the council session concluded, a young Israxi scientist approached Dr. Chen with what humans would recognize as excitement. "I had what you call a crazy idea last night," the scientist announced. "I couldn't sleep because I kept thinking about impossible things. Is this how it feels to be human?" Sarah smiled, understanding that this was perhaps humanity's greatest gift to the galaxy, not their technology or their innovations, but their ability to inspire others to dream. "Actually," she replied, "I think this is how it feels to be alive. Humans just remembered it first. Now we're helping everyone else remember too." The universe, it seemed, had evolved humanity not as a species to be guided or controlled, but as a catalyst for cosmic creativity. In their chaotic, impossible, wonderful way, humans were teaching the galaxy how to imagine again. And somewhere, in the quantum fabric of space-time, the universe itself might have been smiling.